Hi, welcome to this university-run business talk webinar in these COVID-19 times. My name is Peter Hooley. I'm the Director of Business Development at the university's Faculty of Business and Law. Today's topic is staying local, whilst keeping global or going global. With me on the webinar today is Dr. Emily Yarrow, who is a lecturer in international human resources. Emily, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, good afternoon. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today, and hello to everyone who will join us at a different time. So, Peter, thank you very much for your kind introduction. So, I'm a lecturer in international human resource management in University of Portsmouth's Business School. So, I predominantly teach MBA students, but also undergraduate students, as well as supervising PhD students. I come from a commercial background. I was a buyer at Procter & Gamble before and have various consulting experiences with predominantly blue chip companies across the world as well. So very much looking forward to chatting with you all this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. And also from the business side, we've got Sarah Goodall, who's from the company Tribal Impact, who describes herself as a digital marketeer and employee advocacy agent, I suppose. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself and your company?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much, Peter. So yeah, I'm Sarah. I run a local business, but operates on a very global level. So I think that's probably why I've been invited to talk here today. So yeah, I run a company called Tribal Impact. I'm a marketer by heart. I've always had a career in marketing, mainly in the technology sector. So working for companies like IBM and SAP and Hitachi. And then I set my own business up about 5 years ago, working with companies to activate their employees on social media. So everything we do, we don't run social media channels for companies, but we do help employees build confidence on social media. So that's pretty much what we do. And I'm local to Portsmouth, so we run it from here. So.
Okay, thank you very much. So just for the audience at home, how's it going to work today? We've had a number of questions that have been sent in by the people who've registered, and there's some very interesting ones there about global relationship and government and thinking and how to get started, and we're going to run through those. I will put them to the panel, selecting someone to answer the first question, and we'll also see if the other panel members want to comment on that. At the same time, you may have noticed that there is a chat function within the webinar. If anything comes to mind while you're listening to these speakers talk, then please put that in there. Remember, my team will aggregate them and feed them through to me, and we'll come back to those at the end or even live as we go through. This is being recorded, it's on video, and it will shortly be up on the university's web pages, and we'll also promote it out on LinkedIn. So if you see this and think actually it would be good for someone else to have a look, or a friend who would be really interested, don't worry, we'll put it up there. Keep an eye on the university's LinkedIn page and profile more than anything, and you will see it come up. So I think we will jump straight in with some of the questions received, and I particularly like this one because it's a good intro question. It's, I feel like the world is now closed, as I cannot fly or train anywhere internationally. Any tips on establishing global relationships via online? And I think I'm probably going to come to you, Sarah, initially, because I think this is an area where you're currently delivering training for people. So any tips on establishing global relationships via online?
Yeah, so I mean, this is kind of what we tend to do anyway. So as a business, we help other organizations do that. So for us, the platform of connection really is any social media channel. And it's certainly, we work in business to business. So the classic platform for us starts with LinkedIn. We also use Twitter, and we're starting to use Instagram a little bit more to connect with clients and things. But generally, it's LinkedIn as the first point of call. And pretty much everybody's there. And it's the most up-to-date database you can ever imagine, because when people move from job to job, the business card doesn't update, but their LinkedIn profile does. You can pretty much guarantee that. So it's a really good place to start building connections, staying in touch with people. And once you're connected, the key here then is to start engaging and sharing on a regular basis on platforms like LinkedIn, because otherwise people are going to forget about you. Okay? So unless you are present and visible, it's not that people will miss you, but people won't see you. And this is where the difference is. You know, you can connect to people, but actually you need to stay front of mind with them. And I don't mean spamming them, but I mean doing enough that's sharing and keeping you in front of mind with those people on a regular basis. And that's how you start to build relationships. And I think when we started our business, I'm not a salesperson. So 5 years ago, I was pretty terrified about growing the business. I'd never written a proposal. I'd never made a cold call, nothing. But everything that how we've built the business over the last 5 years has been through relationships and online relationships. And it's amazing. You don't actually have to get in a car, travel across the country for 1 hour meeting and then travel back. It's those face-to-face meetings are still valuable, but actually you can do quite a lot digitally before you even get to that stage. And LinkedIn is really, for me, it's the platform where it all starts for businesses. So.
And I suppose just to follow up on that a little bit, you talked about regularly posting, about having contact, staying in touch, engaging, sharing things, etc. How do you take it from that, shall we say, more passive activity that people perhaps are seeing and you're in their presence of mind, to a connection that perhaps enables you to get the kind of video face-to-face call that we're having right now?
Well, that is a good question, because I think a lot of people, they'll start on LinkedIn and then, they're not sure what to do, and they're really quite scared of sharing anything, especially if you come from a heavily regulated industry where you're just practically terrified of sharing anything. So the trick is just don't share anything. But actually, when you start engaging with others, that's a good start, right? So you start liking other people's content, maybe leave a comment, maybe even reshare their content. That's a good start. And then you get to the point where you start finding your own content. What do you find interesting? What do you end up reading? And then starting to share that. And then you start to see people engaging with your content. And this is how you move from the passive, like, I've got a great network, to I've got a great network, and actually I'm starting to communicate with them regularly. And you can start to see things starting to take off. So it is we call it like a social media maturity model. And people start from social zero, and then they start moving in different ways. And some people move fast and some people take their time, but really it's as far as you comfortably want to go. Not everybody wants to be a social media influencer, and that's fine. But actually just getting on that journey is a good place, and it keeps you present. It keeps you in front of mind with people. And I always think, we always talk to customers about attracting customers to you through the great content and sharing and being front of mind with them. But it's also how you attract jobs to you as well. It's not enough to just put your CV up there and say, I've done this and I've done that. Show that you are doing this and you are on top of your industry and your game. And that's where the jobs find you. And this is how you can start to shift, LinkedIn to be less of a passive, just get a job kind of tool, to more of a, this is my personal brand. It's a great time to do it.
Okay, that's very thorough and great answer. Emily, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, some great responses, Sarah. Thank you. I think I think there's a real importance to be strategic, but to be genuine at the same time, and to think about one's own personal brand, or maybe the brand of your small business, for example, and thinking about, well, how can I not only interact with my audience? Who is that audience? Who is it now? Who do I potentially want it to be in the future? And how can I help the people who I'm already connected to? How can I help them, and how can they help me to achieve what it is that I want to achieve out of those networks? I think much like you said, Sarah, as well, I think, using a suite of platforms, if you like. So, for example, I use a lot of Twitter to engage with my academic audiences as well, and thinking about how can you use hashtags to get into potentially new and different conversations as well. So using hashtags as well on Instagram, on LinkedIn as well, and on Twitter as well. I think as well it's about building meaningful followership and really trying to, I think we've spoken a lot about establishing relationships, but I think it's also about maintaining and developing those existing relationships and getting those to work for you. I think there's this notion of the strength of weak ties as well. And now during the lockdown period is really a time where we can maybe engage more with people through the online platforms, for example. So the question was around sort of global reach, I guess. So there's opportunity through global networking events where no travel at all is required. I know, for example, chambers of commerce are offering global events as well, or really just thinking what your network is doing so far as well.
Mm. You made a good point there, Emily, about I've really noticed businesses that are doing this quite well. They're pivoting their social presence to be more about community. So, actually engaging their audience in another way, rather than just publishing the new menu next week or, what's new on the cake stand this week, whatever. They're actually engaging their audiences. So a great example, actually, Costa, right, coffee, have just dropped into my inbox how you make ginger biscuits, the ones that you buy in their shop normally. So they're giving away little bits of their secret sauce, if you like, to engage their community and help them feel connected to the brand, even at a point when you're not physically connected to the brand, which I thought was quite interesting. So we have since made those ginger biscuits twice, I have to say. So yeah, we polished them off in a day. So but it's a great idea, and I think businesses can learn from that, which is about building relationships. It's a good time to expand those, but actually not maybe giving something away, but think about community rather than just connections. So yeah.
Good advice actually on last week's podcast, which was all about maintaining supply chain or belief in the supply chain. One of the big areas that came through was being genuine, keeping it local, moving in that community to make sure that the people that are around you are the ones that are supporting you as a business. So I suppose there's a thread there that works for both. So we'll move on to the next question, which was, I think is around people who have a global presence existing already. And it says, working with global teams was hard enough before. And it's sort of, the person who sent it in mentions time zones, cultural differences. Now I'm noticing as each government advises something different, and I think there's something we were talking about, Sarah, before we came on, which is that everyone's responding to their own country's version of the pandemic. It's becoming increasingly difficult to create a sense of team. And I suppose they've just written, what are the panel's thoughts? And I suppose to phrase that into a question is, how do you, and I'll probably come to Emily first as somebody who's interested in international human resource management, how do you manage those cultural differences, I suppose, COVID-19 or otherwise?
Great question. Thanks, Pete. I think first off, it's about communication. And that's really going to underpin everything that I'm going to talk about this afternoon, and listening to people and asking and saying, look, what is it that we as an organization can do for you? What is it I'll first of all speak about right now in the current context of lockdown, COVID-19, and then also more broadly, it's thinking about, well, actually, what is it that our employees need right now? How can we support them in a meaningful way, in a kind way as well, and in a way that's going to build those relationships over the longer term as well. So first of all, asking people, and then how do you do that? Well, regular check-ins as well. So not just tons of meetings, but actually quite loosely structured check-ins and maybe socials as well, where people can interact. The issue potentially there may be time zones. So if you're working with larger global teams, you might take it in turns. So I have collaborators in Australia, New Zealand, for example. We take it in turns. So sometimes they'll have our meetings at breakfast time, and I'll have it at dinner time, and then we'll swap over. And really just trying to give everybody equal voice. I think really more broadly, it's about planning for the future to give people hope. So thinking about what it is that we want to do together as a team, and what role does everybody play in achieving that. And that can be really empowering, I think, as well, and getting people's input into that. An important part of that, of course, is building trust. So that links back to my previous comment about communication, is making people feel a part of something, making people have trust in the organization or you as a leader, by letting them know that actually they're cared about as a person who might have lots of new things going on in their life. You might have new and different childcare responsibilities, elder care responsibilities, a sick family member. Thinking about how we work with our staff potentially differently during these times. There might also be resistance to change. So what we see a lot in the management literature in this area as well is that there can be high levels of resistance to change. And what we know is that again, trust building and communication is integral to that. And think about any barriers to success for the team, but really just building community and meaningful engagement. And actually, I think that links quite nicely as well into some of the points that Sarah and I both made for the first question around engaging with our communities online as well. And that can create a sense of community and a sense of a broader space for our global teams as well. I think just as ever, and that hasn't really changed due to COVID. But in a global marketplace, it's about responsiveness, it's about agility, and it's about flexibility as well. Not just in decision making processes, but around communication and how we do business. Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Sarah?
Yeah, I think those last three words you said were spot on: flexibility, agility, and responsiveness. I mean, we at Tribal, we're a completely remote business anyway. I mean, we're only 11 employees, but we have a contractor network of about 25, and we're all over the place. We don't have an official office where we all come in, and I've done that for several reasons, really, because I get to hire the best talent for the job without having the best talent within my local postcode, but also because I've got 3 kids, I've got a busy life, and I just need flexibility, and I just, I can't expect my employees to do something I wouldn't do, and I just need to have the time to get them to school and do their homework and that. So the whole adjusting to the remote working side has not had as much impact on us, because we've always been operating like that for the last 5 years. But that said, we've learned a lot about how to operate as a digital team, what to do, what not to do. And we are big into, we've always been using Zoom. So Zoom is a great tool to communicate. And I have now, every Friday, I do a little video recording just to summarize 5 minutes what's happened in the week. So to tell the team, this is where we're at as a business, this is what we're doing. And also actually to say, look, we're all in it. And I wear my heart on my sleeve, right? If I've had a rough week with the homeschooling, you're going to hear about it on that Friday meeting. So, and I also have kids wandering in all the time as well. But I sometimes host a bit of I call it my virtual coffee shop. So we invite the extended team and we just all hang out on the call for an hour and just chit chat about anything. The rule is not work. So so that's a good thing. But we have, we've got somebody in Barcelona, we've got somebody in America, we've got people dotted around Europe. So it's, it is quite a cultural thing. We get used to working like this though, and we use Microsoft Teams brilliantly. It's a bit like Slack and whatnot, but we're always chit-chatting on that, and we know when to take it off that to either a voice memo or a video or a we interchange the media that we use to work with each other. So we've learned quite quickly what works and what doesn't. But Teams is brilliant. I mean, for that, it just keeps us all connected across the time zones. It's just perfect. So yeah, we rely on technology a lot to keep our team operating as a team. So don't know if that helps.
That's all really useful. I took some amazing things from that around, particularly like the words virtual coffee shop.
Yeah, my virtual I love a coffee.
Virtual tea room, but either or. Okay, move on to our next question then, which is, I've had to pause my business and furlough my staff. Keeping positive, I've decided to sit down and strategize on what I will do once lockdown is over. I run a software business and would like to consider selling in international markets. And I suppose the question that they have put forward is, what's my first step? And I suppose as it's a bit salesy, I'll go to Sarah first.
Well, with my marketing and sales hat on, I'd be really clear about who you want to talk to. And we always say, define what your persona is. Okay, so who is it? I think you touched on this, Emily, right? Who is your target audience? Who is it today? But who do you want it to be? You've got to figure that out. And then what I would say is not enough just to say, oh, it's the marketing director or it's the HR director. You've got to get under the skin of those people. So you've got to have a chat with them to really understand what's the typical profile of that audience. How old are they? How long have they been in job? What's their motivations? What's their challenges? What's their aspirations? Where are they going? Once you get into the head of your target buyer, you can then start looking for them, and you can start to create content that speaks to their issues, because that's the next thing. We've just had a call with a customer this morning about this, actually. But until you really understand who it is that is likely to buy this product, you won't be able to create content that's going to speak to them. And you need to be creating the content that helps educate them through the buying journey. So less about your product and how wonderful it is, and more about what it is, what the issue is it's going to solve. So I think this is a bit in the marketing gap where people go a bit wrong, because they just jump to this is what we do. But actually think about your buyer and the process they're going through. Why would I buy it? What issue is this going to fix for me? And so that's where I would say your first step is. So understand your audience, and then create your content strategy around, and then get on LinkedIn and start connecting, finding issue, sharing content and getting front of mind with those target buyers. That would be the best step, I think.
Yeah, I'd certainly echo that. There have been times as a university when we need to connect with a university in a completely different country without a connection with, and I can nearly always find a significantly senior contact in my LinkedIn network to start a conversation with. So yeah, I've got personal experience with that. Emily, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think so. I think again, it's a very thought-provoking question. I think I would be inclined to almost sort of suggest even just kind of taking a step back before you're thinking about your audiences, assuming that you know what your product or service can offer or fix, but thinking about, well, first of all, why do I want to take my business to different countries around the world? So think about the reasons why. Think about where in the world might there be an appetite for my particular product or service. Do I have any intelligence in my existing networks who can maybe give me a bit of market insight? I think from a kind of more consulting perspective, I suppose, it's about building those foundations of knowledge and understanding what different markets look like, and whether there's even scope to provide that product or service there. It's really about thinking about then, well, what does competition look like? Is there competition, and how can I deal with that competition? Do I have a slightly different USP to them? Where's my little or maybe big gap that I'm potentially going to fill, and why? And then particularly in the current climate, I think it's really important to be aware of risk within different international markets as well, and also just consulting with maybe local chambers of commerce, again, to be aware of what internationalization support there's available as well from government to enter different markets as well. But just to really be aware and know what your business is good at, and what it's maybe less good at, and try to build on those strengths in the different markets that you might potentially try to enter.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a fair point, actually, isn't it? And thinking about the trade that I do, there are plenty of website resources for the UK for people who want to trade in the UK. And with Google Translate and everything else now, I'm sure that in various countries of the world, there are equivalent web pages that you can actually have a look at areas where the governments are actually encouraging people in. If it matches what you're doing, there's a nice connection there to start what you're doing. We had quite a few questions. It's going to move on that were Brexit related, actually, which was interesting when they were coming in. But actually, what they were actually saying was that, and this is one of them, Brexit was going to force me to consider teams in Asia and other areas anyway. And this is an interesting one that came through. A number of people asked this question. We've kind of summarised it into one. I'm surrounded by options, franchises, employing consultants or business leads, setting up an office in the country. And I suppose what people are saying is, what are the pros and cons? And actually, one of the things that came up a lot was that HR aspect of, like, what are the HR implications of perhaps franchising to or employing or your own people in other countries. And I'm probably going to come to Emily first, because I had a HR slant tip, then I'll come back to Sarah, because obviously there is a sales implication as well. So what do you think, Emily?
Sure. I think the Brexit topic, of course, is an emotive one for most of us in many different ways. I think it raises very pertinent questions around, not just around internationalization, but around legislation, around employees in different organizations around the world. As well, I think it's about thinking about, do we actually want to keep our employees in the home country and then sending them to work, so almost on expatriate assignments, or actually are we thinking about opening maybe a franchise of whatever it is that we're doing overseas, or having sort of subsidiaries as well? So thinking about what actually is the internationalization strategy of the organization, and how does that fit with our existing people management strategy in the organization, and where and what are our existing talents, and who is our workforce? Is our workforce going to want to move or be able to move around the world, or actually can we pursue something more online, for example? So it's about, I think, about being aware of your workforce, aware of your workforce's needs, but also desires as well. And again, this idea of just really knowing your offering and where your value add is in the organization. And I think that's a kind of a global idea rather than something that's specific to doing business in one context.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to add on that. Only that what triggered me, I can only speak from my experience, is that our contractor network, for example, we've had contractors traveling the world. We've actually got one of our employees stuck in Brazil at the moment because he got locked down over there while he was there visiting family. But my view is that I don't really mind where you are in the world, as long as you get the work done and you're there for customers and you stay safe. And do you know what I mean? So we've had contractors literally backpacking it around Asia and doing work for us whilst on a beach in Bali. And we have a business model that works that way, so we're kind of lucky in that sense. But I have always been of the opinion that we should, where we can, be flexible, that people can flex their time around their priorities in life, but also where they want to live, and we have one chap in Barcelona, he lives there. We're interviewing people in different, it does at the minute, the whole Brexit thing is not phasing me, because I'm more interested in getting the right talent. I'll make it work, right? We'll explore what we have to do to get the right people in the business that fit us. If they bring the right skills and they've got the right attitude and they're passionate, then, and they want to work with us, then we'll figure out a way to do it. And we've got an amazing HR company, local company actually, who help us as well.
Yeah.
So
I think just what Peter, if I may, just sort of Sarah, you were saying about what's possible will make it happen as well. I think that's absolutely true. Businesses will be responsive. Whatever happens with Brexit, I think the market will have to become more lean in some respects, but I think a lot will come down to what is possible through legislation. Unfortunately, I think with Brexit, there will be a negative impact on legislation surrounding working directives, for example, and a lot of legislation that actually protects employees. So that is something to be aware of, I think, going forward as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I suppose this one is quite interesting from my own perspective, the next question, because actually, regardless of Brexit, there's always been sort of campaigns from government around exporting is great, and we've had Department for International Trade and Development and various government departments and various quangos over the years that make all these exporting opportunities available, so to speak. But someone's written here, if I'm at the first thinking stage of going global, where can I look for inspiration and advice on countries and markets? So I suppose you've touched on this a little bit before about having an internationalization plan. And I suppose for some people, perhaps sitting in their business quite happy, but seeing all these messages around it's time for Britain to get exporting again, and it's time to enter Chinese markets, and you're reading things about the fact that there's over 1.4 billion people or something in China, that India recently gone over 1 billion. You start adding that up, that's close to a third of the world's population, those sorts of things. If people are sort of saying, well, I feel like my product can, but where do I look for that inspiration or that potential market? Because there's 140 something countries in the world. It's a big count on a hand job to do. I'll probably get Sarah first and see what she has to say.
Yeah, I mean, do you know, as you were talking, I was sitting here thinking, I'm a small business, I'm a local small business, but we deal globally, and I'm kind of trying to remember how that happened, really, because I didn't go out and look for it. It just kind of happened by mistake. I know that's not the right answer, but I've got a call with a very large technical company tomorrow who's based in Japan, right? And we deal with companies in Germany, in France, in America, quite a few customers in America, and I didn't really make it happen. I went where the market needed our, I just followed. I didn't go looking for it. I didn't carve a plan, because sometimes you can plan and plan and plan, and then it still doesn't happen. Sometimes you just got to listen to the market and go where it is, And I know it sounds a bit vague and probably not very theoretical, but that is kind of what's happened with us. And once you've got one customer in Germany, then other customers come to you in Germany, and then suddenly you're starting to build a bit of a cluster there, and then somebody refers you into someone in France or Spain or Portugal, and then suddenly you've started to build up this global network, and you're starting to then drop hubs down. So I can't, and we've had to learn, how to transact in different currencies and how to put wiggle room in our pricing, because we've been stung on the exchange rates and stuff. So it's all happened as we've gone on. So I know that's not really going to answer that question, but I'm just speaking from experience. It was a little bit like follow your nose kind of thing and see where it goes. So that's a good thing, isn't it? Follow your nose, see where it goes. That's not very... I
think when this question came in, one of the things that first occurred to me was, why not think of yourself as a global business in the first place, rather than a UK business that needs to go globally? And perhaps that's where you were at in what you're doing, particularly as, we could be having this conversation, this webinar with anyone anywhere in the world. How finite are borders in terms of people behaviour, at least. Is there anything you'd like to add, Emily?
Yeah, again, I think it really depends on the nature of your product or service as well. I think it's about thinking less about maybe the BRIC countries first, so Brazil, Russia, India, China, and maybe thinking about, well, actually, are there maybe potentially smaller marketplaces where we can test what we might want to do in the bigger markets as well? Or think about, actually, is there a cluster of countries that we might like to target, or actually are we going to go a bit rogue and organic and just try something new somewhere different as well? I mean, I think that will be, and thinking about larger organizations, that's driven by the top level strategy of the organization. But I think thinking more specifically about small to medium sized enterprises, like Sarah's been talking about as well, sometimes it can happen as organically as, one customer in an existing market refers you to one of their contacts, maybe in France or Germany or wherever your particular cluster is, and just really, again, listening to what potential customers are telling you, and just having a kind of ear to the ground to know what's happening in those markets. And again, social media is fantastic for that as well. So I think, again, it comes back to this idea of listening and finding out the information that you want, and drawing on your network as well for that information.
Mm-hmm. And I think also, just to add to that, there was one very quick piece you said there about, it will depend on the product, but certainly what I look at is, because I know who we're going after, I look at platforms like LinkedIn to identify who those people are. So when I'm running a webinar or an event or something like that, I'm going after not necessarily the geography or, I'm just going across, but the role and the responsibilities is who I'm targeting, not necessarily. So I think that comes back to your point, Peter, about, you think yourself a global company when don't think, UK and moving, but then it's a little bit different for us. So we're not exporting a product, we're not shipping something out, if you like, we're a services driven business. So a little bit different.
Okay, thank you very much. And so we finally come to our last question of the ones that were sent in. And this is, I'm going to come to Emily first, because this is quite a HR kind of question. Is, I've worked hard to create a business that treats people as equals. I'm setting up offices in Africa and Asia, any tips on how I keep that ethos in less culturally tolerant countries? And I suppose I read into this question, they're talking about gender equality and family policies and all that sort of stuff, which is established in the UK. I won't say perfect because we can always do more. But moving into those areas of the world where perhaps the ethos isn't the same, any tips?
Yeah, I think first off is to really try and keep at the forefront of your mind is that equality, be that gender equality or all the different types of equality that we're thinking about between different groups, is that actually sometimes equality doesn't come from treating everybody the same. Sometimes people need to be treated slightly differently or more flexibly. And again, it comes back to this idea of listening to what it is that people need or want as well, and thinking about what is the specific source of inequality in that particular context. First of all, from a sort of an ethics standpoint, as an organization, are we happy to work in a context or a marketplace where we know that there is vast gender equality or a terrible gender pay gap, for example? Actually, are we happy to have representation there or not? And if we're already operating in a market, is thinking about really listening to our workforce, and actually, can we be a trailblazer and saying, actually, we do things differently, but doing that in a culturally sensitive way. I think it's also about not kicking up the dust too much, but also not further perpetuating inequalities in a particular country in the world. I think it's also about having watertight practices and policies in place, and really giving employees voice, and having a culture within the organization where people can speak up and can say what they need and why something might be unequal.
I think that's very, very helpful. Actually, as you said, talked about that there, I was mindful of the fact that sometimes when we're looking to do projects as a university, we have to look into country, culture, behaviour, and everything else. And there's a fantastic website called transparency.org that we use quite a lot that compile yearly reports on countries across a whole spectrum of things, from sort of financial probity all the way through to cultural behaviours such as gender and everything else. So whoever's written that question, that's one place I'd potentially suggest you might look at when you're looking at the ethics of a country. And it's a UN organisation, so it has a degree of independence. Sarah, I'm not going to come to you from a HR perspective, but as a sales or as an SME managing people in other countries, have you come across any areas where perhaps there's policy disparity or things that have to be dealt with individually in your company?
No, I don't think I've really got too much to add on this, because we're not big enough in that sense. We've got a few people dotted around, but not so much that we'd have to address it in that way. So no, I can't contribute to that one. So, but that was brilliant. Emily's answer is brilliant, and I've written down transparency.org as well. So good idea.
It's a great website. So yeah, that's the end of the questions we had for today. I've sort of written some notes as I've gone along. I mean, something that's going to stick with me is the responsiveness, agility, and flexibility in that looking at how you run your teams. Sarah, pivot your social presence to community is never going to leave my mind. It's like a catchphrase. I think it probably would apply across so many issues where actually the local business or the local effect will help you through these times. I think that's a fantastic kind of way to look at it, whether even with your national or local company. Also, I'm thinking about setting up a virtual coffee shop. There's a lot of things from today: local chambers of commerce, having an internationalization strategy, and test what you do in smaller countries. That was a fantastic point from you, Emily, actually, because we're always being encouraged to break huge markets like China and Russia and everything else, but why not go and test A, where someone else perhaps isn't operating, and B, where you can actually review it and get a good idea. Thank you very much for joining us on the webinar today. I've really appreciated it. I've certainly learned a lot. So Sarah Goodall from Tribal and Dr. Emily Yarrow from the University of Portsmouth. Hope you'll see you again soon. I think we've got another webinar coming up next week. And is there anything else you'd like to say before we drop off?
No, thank you for hosting us this afternoon, Peter, and thank you to all our watchers for joining us and who will join us at another time as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's been really fun. Thank you.
And for me, it's a big thank you to the internet for holding out. But
and the kids for not coming in. So
indeed, have a great bank holiday weekend. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.